In this video, we're doing another key comic book spotlight, this time on the god of mischief, Loki. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle. And in this video, we're doing another key comic book spotlight, this time on Loki. Now, if you are new to my channel or this series in general, what I typically do with Key Comic Book Spotlight is pick a notable superhero or supervillain and just point out 5 key or grail comic books that the comic book collecting community often pursues when they're fans of this character. So this video isn't here necessarily to identify Spec, but just give new comic book collectors an idea of what some of the big books are and maybe, give old comic book collectors some new information that they didn't know about. So, but before I get into my picks for this video, if you guys could drop me a like or a comment or subscribe if you're enjoying my content. Love interacting with you guys, help support the channel, do one of those things, I would really appreciate it. All right, now that that's out of the way, let's get into today's video. And of course, like I mentioned, this one's going to be about Loki. And with all my key comic book spotlight videos, it's always really hard to narrow it down to 5 books. But I think I did a pretty good job for this one, although with my 5th pick, I did kind of cheat a little bit. But when we get there, you guys will understand what I mean by cheating. But with my first pick, I think that there's going to be no denying about this one. This one is actually Loki's first appearance, which is Journey into Mystery number 85. And this is just an ultimate classic Silver Age book, Journey into Mystery 85, first appearance of Loki. This is a book that I think, I would absolutely love to have this in my collection. As someone who is a big fan of quote unquote supervillains, this is one that I think is like, I think next to Doctor Doom, this is probably the most S-tier Marvel supervillain book that you could probably get your hands on. And one of the things, speaking of supervillains, but one of the things I think is actually really interesting about this book is I actually think for how old this is and how notable a character Loki is, this book is actually undervalued. Now, we are, at the time of the recording of this video, we're actually before the Loki show, and I have seen this book start to slowly heat up. I have a feeling that, come the end of the Loki show, when we're on the other side of things, like if you're watching this video after that show has premiered, we're definitely going to be seeing this book taking a huge jump in numbers. And I think for good reason, because, supervillain books are often not as expensive as superhero ones, but Loki is a character who, he kind of blurs the line in terms of superhero and supervillain. And for that reason, it feels like this is a book that generally speaking should be at least competing with the likes of the Daredevil #1s and the Doctor Strange #1s and things like that. But it's not quite there in terms of its value, although, after the show, who knows what it's going to be. But let's dig into the numbers here. And as you can see, on the high end, there is a 9.6 on the census, which sold for $145,000 back in July of 2012. And then all the way here at the bottom, you're going to see this book maybe around the $700, $650 mark, although I think that these numbers are not updated. So I feel like to get your hands on this book in any kind of way is going to run you that like $1,000 mark. I've already seen this book being sold above FMV all over the place on Facebook and Instagram. But for good reason. I mean, I think that this has been undervalued as a book for a long time. Journey into Mystery 85, first appearance of Loki. Now, let's go on now to my second pick here. And my second pick is actually going to be Loki's second appearance. In case you don't have the budget to get your hands on Journey into Mystery 85, well, how about try your hands on Journey into Mystery 88, second appearance of Loki? And one of the reasons why I wanted to point out this book is that I just felt like this particular book right here, Journey into Mystery 85 and 88, these just have that sort of vintage, iconic art style that captures Loki in his bad guy form with the horns and everything like that. And I just think that there's something so iconic about these two books that I think are totally worth having when you're fans of the Loki character. Not to mention that you get a little side thing here, which is this is actually the first appearance of Odin, I believe it is. So Journey into Mystery 88, you get the second appearance of Loki, and then you get the second appearance of Odin. But this is a Loki video, so we're only going to talk about Loki. So anyways, I think that this is a book that's really also been heating up slowly. I've been seeing the numbers sort of rise, but this one is much more affordable if you can't get your hands on number 85. And as we dig into the numbers here, you'll see there was a 9.6 that sold in 2015 for $11,000. And then all the way at the bottom here, you won't find too many CGC numbers generally speaking, but when I do go onto eBay and look at low grade versions of this book, typically speaking, I see it as low as maybe $100, $150. I think that you would be getting a good deal if you could find it for that range. Other than that, I do see it going for, pushing the $200 mark depending on the grade. So Journey into Mystery 88. If you can't get the first appearance of Loki, you might as well try your hands at the second appearance of Loki. All right, let's move on now to my next pick here. And my next pick is actually going to be Loki #1 from 2004 by Rhodey and Ribic. And what is the significance of this? Well, this is the first time you saw Loki in his own series. Now, granted, this was a limited series, but what was really cool about this is that you're seeing L-O-K-I right there on the title. And this is one thing that I think I tend to go back on time and time again with my key comic book spotlight videos is I really find that, if you're a fan of this character and you're wanting to collect some part of history of this character that you really like. It seems to me that capturing the book that has the very first time with their name in the title of the book is definitely a book to go after. And in 2004, Rhodey and Ribic gave us a limited series about Loki, and this kind of really went into his origin. It was really like from his POV, which was at that time was very, very different because, often he would be playing a bad guy. So rarely was it that you're getting a book from the POV of Loki himself. And this one's a really cool one. It goes into the origin of the character, why he hates Asgard. I think it ran for 4 issues, but definitely a really cool book to have. And I think as, we start to get the Loki series and everything like that, I think that these books will heat up, generally speaking. But this is one that, I typically see on eBay right now going for out the $10, $15 mark. So within reach, I do, but that's if you can find a good deal. I've seen it go as high as 20 and 25. But let's look at some of the CGC numbers. As you can see here, there was a sale in November of 2020, a CGC 9.8 for $40. So very, very affordable. But like I said, when you go onto eBay, you're seeing this book around the $20 mark. I think it's a cool piece of Marvel history. I think the art is beautiful. I love when Marvel covers do the sort of painted aesthetic. It gives it a very realistic look, which is kind of cool for comic book form. But Loki #1 from 2004 is my third pick. All right, let's go on now to my fourth pick here. My fourth pick is actually going to be Vote Loki #1. And this is a book that I think is really, really been heating up recently, especially since we got the Loki trailer. And what it seems to me is that, we saw Loki, he was wearing his Vote Loki pin on his chest inside one of the shots of the trailer. And for that reason, people have been really flocking to this book. And one thing that's really cool as far as this book is concerned is it's a really, really cool story where, Loki, he always wants to take over Earth and control the world and let his evil do that kind of bidding, but he's always trying to do it through sort of an evil means. And then in this particular series, what Loki decided to do was actually run for president. So he was like, I'm going to take over the world in a legitimate form, and I'm just going to use my mischief and evil doings within the political sphere, just like every other politician, and maybe I can become president and take over the world that way. So this was a really, really cool story for that reason. It came out in 2016, and I think that this is a book that's really cool. It's instantly sort of become an iconic cover as it relates to the show because we've seen the images from the trailer. So I feel like when we get the Loki show, and if they do some semblance of this story, or it becomes notable within the pop culture where Loki's running for some kind of office in some manner, I think that this book is going to be one that is cherished amongst Loki comic book collectors. So Vote Loki #1, very, very cool book to have. And as we dig into the numbers here, you'll see that there is not too many CGCs listed on this Go Collect here. But when I go onto eBay and I look for this book, this is one that I actually do see heating up. I think in anticipation of the show, and I've seen this being listed at $25, $30, $35, $40 mark. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens. If you're watching this video from the future, and we've had the Loki show already, it'll be interesting to see where this book sort of lands later on down the line. Anyways, Vote Loki #1 is my fourth pick. All right, let's move on now to my fifth pick. And like I mentioned earlier in this video, my fifth pick is a little bit of a cheat because I have multiple books here. And why I picked multiple books for my fifth pick is because to me, when I think about Loki and what he is as a character and what he represents, it's always his mischief, right? He is the god of mischief. And for that reason, he's always taking, always pulling the strings behind the curtain, and he's having superheroes fight other superheroes or villains do this. And everyone is doing his bidding, and he's, the man behind the strings pulling it all off. And so for that reason, I want to point out a couple different storyline series that I thought were notable to Loki, namely the Avengers versus Defenders, Acts of Vengeance, and when Thor gets turned into the Thunder Frog. So to me, all three of these series represent very notable kind of Loki-isms, as I would call them, where he's like pulling the strings behind the scenes and having people do his bidding. So let's start here with the Avengers number 118. This was the Defenders. There was a mini event that crossed over between the Avengers series and the Defenders series. And this was a mini event that happened. It was called Defenders versus Avengers. And this was something that, Loki and Dormammu, as you can see here in the bottom corner, they teamed up to get these two superhero teams to fight against each other in a big misunderstanding. And, they almost got the best of them. And here in book number 118, this is when the plot was revealed that, Loki and Dormammu were working together. So for me, this is a really iconic cover. We in Avengers number 1, which is a book that could have been on this list, but I decided to limit the Silver Age books. Avengers number 1, we have Loki fighting the Avengers for the first time. This was actually the second time that he was going to take on the Avengers, but this time teaming up with Dormammu. So this was a really, really great series. Loki pulling the strings against these two teams. And this particular book stands out to me as the one to get if you want to just collect a Loki book within this series. Avengers 118, the reveal of the plot, and a great, great cover. I mean, look at these two villains standing next to each other as they dominate all of the Avengers. All right, let's go on now here to Avengers West Coast number 55. And what is this? This is, the other series that I think Loki had been pulling the strings for, which is a Marvel crossover event called Acts of Vengeance. Now, Loki decided to pull all of the super villains together. And what he decided to do is, hey, what if we took you and had you fight against this superhero, and we took this supervillain and had them fight against this superhero. So the idea being that we traded supervillains to different superheroes, and the superheroes wouldn't be able to defeat those villains because they're not used to fighting them. So this was Loki's master plan, and this is an event that crossed many, many, many books, and it was actually kind of hard to follow because it spread across so many titles, unless you were to get a trade paperback. But the reason I point to Avengers West Coast number 55 in particular is because this is kind of where it all kind of climaxes into one giant battle. There you see Loki on the cover against Thor. So this is a really cool event, and I don't know if we'll ever see Acts of Vengeance in the Marvel Universe, but as far as Loki pulling the strings, creating a crossover event where he was sort of like the evil mastermind behind it, Acts of Vengeance is one of those books and storylines to me, and Avengers number 55 I think is the book that sort of represents it the best in my opinion. But one of the other things that's interesting about this book is that I believe that this is one of the first times that you see the Dark Scarlet Witch. So as it relates to WandaVision, this is a book that has actually heated up recently. And so when I go into the numbers on eBay, you're actually looking around that $30 mark right now, $25 mark. So, beside it being a very, very cool event book as it relates to Loki, you also get that bonus that it's sort of the first appearance of the Dark Scarlet Witch. Similarly, this is another book right here, Avengers 118. I forgot to mention the price. I see this going on eBay around the $20, $25 mark. So, not necessarily a free book, but as you can see here, if you dig into the numbers, a 9.8 sold back in 2020 for $400. And then on the low end, you're not going to see too many CGCs, but like I said, it's around a $20, $25 book. Similarly, West Coast Avengers, this is a book that isn't typically slabbed, but because of WandaVision, it has heated up recently. And then the last book here that I wanted to talk about as it relates to Loki and Mischief is kind of a fun one. This is Thor 366, where Loki turns Thor into a frog, and just kind of a funny interaction between the two characters. I mean, they've had such a great interplay in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so I felt like this was a book sort of worth mentioning as it relates to Loki and his tricks against Odin's son. So Thor 366 turns him into the frog. This book has actually heated up recently because in Donny Cates' current Thor run, he had the Thor frog return. So this is one that people wanted to get their hands on. I believe this is considered the first full appearance of Thor Thunder Frog. And this is a book that, you're not going to see too many CGC numbers, although there was a 9.8 that sold in February of 2021 for $100. And then on the low end, when I go onto eBay, I typically see this book being sold around the, $20 mark or so. But anyways, those are all the books I have for for Loki, Key Comic Book Spotlight. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys own any of these books? I would love to get Journey into Mystery 85, and I kind of feel like I need to get it before the show starts, if I in fact want to get it, because this is going to be sort of the last time it's going to be living at this price point. But let me know. Do you guys have any of these books? Do you have any other Loki books books that you think are worth putting on the Key Comic Book Spotlight. There was a bunch of honorable mentions for me. Loki, #1, Agent of Asgard, I almost put on here, but I could only have 5, and as you can see, I actually did 8. Let me know what you guys think. Drop me a like or a comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content. Help support the channel, and I will see you in the next video.